The Galactic Council was never meant for a species like humanity. Founded millennia ago by ancient powers long since ossified by protocol and fear, the Council valued control above all, order through compliance, peace through stagnation. They had cultivated a balance of power so delicately maintained that the emergence of a single unpredictable player threatened it all. Earth was at threat. In the early years of contact, humans were tolerated. Curiosity masked condescension. Their biology was unimpressive, their lifespan short. But they learned fast, too fast. Where others adhered to tradition, humans experimented. Where other species debated for decades, Earth launched missions in weeks. Every problem was a puzzle, every challenge a dare. And the more humanity integrated with the galactic fold, the more uncomfortable the Council grew. Human culture spread like wildfire. Music, art, tech philosophies, raw, chaotic, alive. Their economies adapted, their science surged, and their colonists didn't wait for permission. Treaties were questioned, rules bent, customs ignored. To the Council, it was not evolution. It was contamination. So the charges came. Disruption of established protocols. Unauthorized terraforming. Cultural erosion of member species. The hearing wasn't a debate. It was theater. 12 delegates stood in judgment. The human ambassador stood alone, composed but clearly dismissed before a word was spoken. The accusations were read, the vote conducted. 12 hands rose. A unanimous verdict. Earth was no longer welcome. There was no declaration of war, no protests. Just silence. The Council expected outrage. Riots. Pleas for clemency. They had forgotten that humans do not beg. Earth withdrew without fanfare. Communications ceased. Embassies emptied. Trade stations shuttered. One by one, human colonies went dark. The Council chalked it up as a quiet surrender. Another primitive race taught humility. They moved on. But on Earth, something different was happening. There was no panic. There was planning. Not in the news feeds or on the political stages, but in the minds of engineers, scientists, and strategists. A quiet fury took root, not the kind that burned fast and loud, but the kind that simmered cold and long. Humanity didn't crumble. It consolidated. The Council had severed the link. Earth would never ask for it back, because something deeper than pride had been wounded, something older. Humanity had spent centuries looking outward, wanting to join something greater. And in the moment they were cast out, they realized something. They didn't need a seat at someone else's table. They could build their own. The disappearance wasn't retreat. It was redirection. With eyes no longer turned outward in diplomacy, humanity turned inward in purpose. Freed from the constraints of Council oversight, Earth became something else, focused, unified, driven. What the Council mistook for silence was, in truth, the forging of something new beneath the surface. The first step was information control. Civilian networks were rerouted, encrypted, and detached from known systems. Planetary communications fell into a deep layer of firewalled intelligence. Probes returning from deep space stopped transmitting to known frequencies. Satellites went dark, then vanished. Surveillance attempts from other species were quietly intercepted, then ignored. Earth had disappeared, but it had not gone to sleep. The Terran Accord replaced obsolete governments. No grand announcements, no elections broadcast across the stars. Just quiet agreements between Earth and its scattered colonies. Mars, Europa, Titan, Proxima Centauri b, and a dozen others, settlements bound by their shared exile. Independent once by nature, they were now united by necessity. No longer humans of different planets, just Terrans. They began to build, not just ships, but systems, modular fleets capable of deep void operation, supply-independent, multifunction. Military craft were designed with efficiency over intimidation. Every hull a layered redundancy. Every system a hybrid of human invention and salvaged Council tech, reimagined without regard for outdated rules. AI partnerships matured beyond limits previously set by interstellar law. Neural-linked piloting, predictive warfare algorithms, and fusion-based field projectors, impossible under Council doctrine, perfected in isolation. Power was no longer drawn from solar dependence, but harvested from dark matter reactors and quantum siphons. Terraforming accelerated through nano-adaptive bioformers that didn't wait centuries but achieved atmosphere shifts in decades. A single frontier world could be seeded, stabilized, and habitable in under 50 years. Council science moved with caution. Terran science moved with intent. Recruitment was not limited to humans. At the galaxy's edge, in lawless zones the Council ignored, there were species discarded by bureaucracy, exiles, war orphans, and refugee clans. Earth reached out to them in secret, not with promises of hierarchy, but with offers of collaboration. Labor for knowledge, loyalty for protection, partnership for survival. Species once dismissed as irrelevant now work shoulder to shoulder with human scientists, engineers, and thinkers. The Dominion wasn't just Earth reborn. It was a convergence of the overlooked. The first true Dominion world was not Earth. It was Virex 3, a failed mining colony abandoned decades prior. Terraforming drones reclaimed it in 3 years. Towering arcologies rose from the dust. Orbital yards manufactured hulls the Council wouldn't have recognized as ships. And still, the galaxy remained unaware. Because while the Council watched for noise, the Dominion made progress in silence. Logistics networks were built through uncharted systems. Wormhole relays stabilized fringe routes previously considered unusable. Commerce hubs emerged in dead sectors. The Dominion grew in the void between maps. The second stage was redundancy. Every world was self-sufficient. Each colony trained for total isolation. Loss of communication didn't mean collapse. It meant fallback to independent protocol. One system falling wouldn't cripple the Dominion. It would simply adapt. Central command was distributed, AI synchronized, and resistant to infiltration. The Terran Dominion could not be decapitated. It had no head, only millions of aligned wills. They weren't preparing for war. They were preparing to never need permission again. The Council, blind in its complacency, still believed humanity was licking its wounds. A few murmurs came from distant systems, freighters that vanished, frontier traders who spoke of strange vessels appearing without insignia, silently observing. The stories were dismissed. Ghost ships, pirate myths, human remnants, desperate and fragmented. They were wrong. The ghost fleets were real. Fully manned, fully armed, fully ready. And they never fired a shot. Observation, data collection, silent testing. The Dominion didn't provoke. It studied. It mapped vulnerabilities. It learned Council movements, ship formations, signal codes. It cracked encryption without announcing its presence. By the time the Council realized they'd been infiltrated, half their comm traffic had already been replicated, dissected, and understood. Still, Earth said nothing. Because the Dominion wasn't looking to announce itself. It was waiting for the moment to redefine the galaxy entirely. The Council first noticed a disruption in the rimward trade spine, an unusual traffic reroute that cut travel time in half through a region once considered unstable. No Council vessels had managed to cross that space reliably. Yet reports from fringe traders indicated new, silent way stations offering secure jumps, low toll routes, and guaranteed protection. No logos, no flags, just precision and reliability. Behind closed doors, some species began shifting commerce routes to these unknown providers. The Council demanded answers. Scouts were sent. They never returned. Outposts on the edge of Council influence reported sightings. Sleek vessels with unfamiliar drive signatures, moving in perfect silence, ignoring all hails. Attempts to intercept failed. Nothing hostile, just evasive and untouchable. A pattern emerged. Trade, influence, and data flow were migrating away from established channels. Slowly, methodically, the galaxy was tilting, and the Council wasn't at the center anymore. When the first Terran envoy arrived, it wasn't dramatic. No warships, no ultimatums. A single transport vessel appeared at a Council-aligned station near the Kelrath cluster. The ship bore no weapons, but its systems outmatched every sensor on site. No delegation, Just one emissary. Calm, professional, precise. They handed over a data packet containing navigation charts, economic projections, and an offer. We're not asking to return. We're here to inform you. The Terran Dominion exists. We will no longer remain hidden. The Council's inner chambers descended into chaos. Some believed it a bluff, others a provocation. They debated for weeks. Diplomatic channels were scrambled to re-establish contact. But the Dominion didn't respond. The statement had been made. No request. No need for permission. Just notice. Small council member worlds began to ask questions. Why were Dominion trade routes more efficient? Why were fringe colonies flourishing under this new shadow influence while council territory stagnated? Minor species, long neglected, started receiving offers. Access to advanced tech, autonomous governance, and defense pacts. No strings, no hierarchies. Just partnership and results. What the Council couldn't offer in centuries, the Dominion delivered in months. Fear crept into high command. Fleet analysts began running simulations. Every result ended the same. In a full conflict, the Council's forces would be fractured. Their strength relied on central coordination, fragile alliances, and outdated doctrines. The Dominion had none of those weaknesses. No political bloat, no communication lag, no dependency on old routes. It was decentralized power. Smart, fast, scalable. A decision was made. The Council deployed a blockade along the Lurian Passage, a known trade artery now claimed by Dominion-aligned freighters. They expected resistance, a test of power. What they got was silence. Then, exactly 72 hours later, Dominion vessels arrived. Not to engage, but to observe. 8 ships. Identical, matte black hulls. They didn't jam signals, didn't fire weapons. They simply positioned themselves at precise vectors around the blockade, running visible diagnostics in full view. Every Council ship found itself digitally boxed in, movement calculated, weaknesses logged in real time. No shots fired, no words exchanged, just the quiet, inescapable message: you are not in control. The blockade was withdrawn within 2 days. The Council issued no statement. Internally, it was called a tactical redeployment. Externally, it was humiliation. For the first time, the illusion of their superiority cracked, and the galaxy noticed. Smaller powers began defecting, not out of fear, but pragmatism. The Dominion didn't coerce. It offered results: secure trade, fair governance, access to education, and autonomy. Their message was simple: build your own future, as we did. And it worked. Formerly dependent colonies became nodes in a new network. Scientists from a dozen species collaborated on research stations unbound by tradition. Students from across the stars studied Dominion physics, engineering, and political theory. No grand speeches, no propaganda. Just function over form. Excellence over ego. The Dominion wasn't a rebellion. It was a replacement. What unnerved the Council most wasn't the technology or the tactics. It was the philosophy. The Dominion didn't want power for its own sake. It didn't seek revenge or dominance. It didn't need to. It had already won. Because while the Council clung to hierarchy, the Dominion had built a system that didn't need to rule. It only needed to work better. And it did. And behind it all, humanity remained silent. No boasts, no demands, no leaders paraded for the stars to admire. Only results. Only proof. The shift didn't happen overnight, but it became impossible to ignore. Council influence eroded not through war, but through irrelevance. Their authority depended on compliance, and more species each cycle chose efficiency over allegiance. The Dominion didn't expand through conquest. It expanded by simply being better, faster, fairer, more stable. Worlds once desperate for recognition now declined Council invitations altogether. They had found something more dependable. When the Dominion began mediating disputes between border systems, it wasn't seen as intrusion. It was relief. Conflicts long ignored or bogged down in Council bureaucracy were resolved within weeks. Clear terms, mutual benefit, enforced by fleets that arrived, observed, and left without ever needing to fire a shot. Council envoys were still writing preliminary agendas while Dominion arbitrators were finalizing ceasefires and opening trade. A new standard emerged. Not imposed, but adopted. Territories governed by the Dominion reported higher living standards, stronger economies, and greater stability. They weren't vassals. They weren't colonies. They were collaborators, unified by a principle older than the Council had remembered: respect through action, not tradition. Eventually, the Council couldn't contain its anxiety. A message was dispatched, formal and stiff: an invitation for open talks, an offer to normalize relations and ensure stability. The Dominion replied. A single line: stability is not preserved by old orders. It's earned by those who adapt. There was no escalation, but the statement stung. For the Council, it was the first time they'd been openly dismissed with precision. Not rage, not rebellion, just disinterest. Still, they clung to structure. One final display was planned, a show of presence at the edge of Dominion-influenced space. A blockade formed near Tarsus Field, a small but strategic trade hub. 17 Council vessels, outfitted with the latest retrofitted tech, arrived in formation. They expected negotiation, or retaliation, or panic. What they got was analysis. Dominion ships arrived 2 hours later. 6 of them. Smaller, sleeker, no visible weapons. Their arrival was logged by every Council ship system. Precise drive signatures, flawless formation. They did not approach. They did not posture. They simply existed in place, broadcasting nothing but passive diagnostics. Council captains began receiving internal reports. Fire control systems became sluggish. Target locks failed. Navigation routines developed minor drift. AI cores reported inefficiencies, trace delays, unexplained cycles. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to make the crews sweat. The Dominion ships never moved. They didn't need to. The Council vessels withdrew. Officially, it was a tactical reassessment. Unofficially, it was defeat. No shots, no casualties. Just quiet, undeniable superiority. Galactic news networks tried to spin it. The Dominion didn't respond. They didn't issue press releases or gloat. They simply continued building, growing, uplifting, and the galaxy kept moving toward them. For the younger species, the message was clear. There was no need to beg for inclusion. No need to accept second-class status. There was an alternative. One by one, these civilizations turned away from the old ways and joined something built on competence, not ceremony. Every new alliance expanded the Dominion not just in size, but in strength. Not through territory, but through knowledge, diversity, and mutual gain. And still, Earth never raised its flag. Because the Dominion wasn't about Earth anymore. It was about a truth born in exile and proven in silence. That being cast out doesn't diminish you. Sometimes it frees you. The Council had banned Earth to preserve order, but they had misunderstood the nature of humanity. They thought Earth needed them. Instead, Earth had shown the stars what was possible without them. The Dominion wasn't revenge. It wasn't rebellion. It was the evolution of an idea. That no seat at the table is worth more than building your own, stronger table and inviting others to sit without chains. There were no statues of heroes. No single name credited for the rise. It wasn't about who led. It was about what they built. And it worked. Across systems, whispers turned into belief. The Dominion wasn't the shadow of Earth. It was the future stepping out of the dark. And when historians would one day ask how it all began, how the balance of galactic power shifted forever, the answer would be painfully simple. They were banned, so they built better.